Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Seller Club podcast. This is episode 60. We are going to get into some really interesting conversation today about cleaning your slate, starting the year with a clean slate and maintaining that slate. So before we get into it, of course, we have to drop
that
beat.
Hey, guys. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
Kevin, who we got in the studio today?
Yeah, we got in the studio. Yep. Yep.
Who do we have?
Who do we have?
Mystery guest.
Mystery guest. I've gotten to know him a lot just because all the benefits that this guy brings to the table because of the product that he has. So let's just have him introduce himself again for the people that are just tuning in, because we've gotten a lot of new followers recently because we've done a lot of giveaways. People are discovering our podcast. So, Kevin, why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. I'm Kevin Reeth. I'm the founder and CEO of Seller Ledger, kind of an old dog around accounting and bookkeeping in the e-commerce space.
Awesome.
There you go.
Yeah, and basically, if Kevin's talking, we're listening because we're always learning how to keep our books better and how to run our businesses tighter, and it's so great. We've done a few episodes throughout our history of the Seller Club podcast with Kevin, and so if this is your first intro to him, please go back and listen to those episodes too. There's so much insight, too much to put in one episode, but we're going to do our best today with this whole idea of a clean slate. And Kevin, we're so glad that you're here with us because the conversation would not be nearly as enlightening without you, frankly. So
well, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. All right, well, should we just go ahead and dive right into it?
Let's do it. We got a lot of things to talk about, and I'm excited about this.
We do. And I know it's funny. We've had conversations before about, at what point in like the holiday season or the new year or after the new year, people are really starting to think, oh man, I got to start preparing my taxes, right? Or I got to look at my numbers for the year and see how my year shook out. I know there's people doing that left, right, and center who are, running their small businesses, their e-commerce businesses. And basically this year, it's still really early in the year, still time for a totally fresh start. And we want to bring clarity to this new year and not clutter. So obviously we all manage physical inventory, but I feel like the mental clutter and the digital clutter of, bookkeeping and record keeping can be really overwhelming for people. So today we're going to go through basically, how do you even get to a clean slate? What if you're a procrastinator? What if your stuff is not together from last year? How do we clean the slate? Then we're going to talk about how do we set the stage, right? How do we set up the slate for this year? Now that it's nice and clean, how do we get our things in order as our numbers and our, all of our transactions and whatever kind of come in throughout the year? How do we get it set up for that? And then how do we maintain that as we go? And the good news, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the good news is that there is some kind of like front end work here to get things set up, but the whole like maintenance part is so incredibly easy.
So easy, for sure.
Yeah, you just got to kind of slay the dragon, get your stuff set up, and then it's way easier to maintain kind of indefinitely, which I love. That's been my experience so far, but we're going to get into the details of it. So let's start with cleaning the slate. Kevin has a real soft spot for procrastinators. I have a feeling he talks to them very often. So people who are like, oh my gosh, what do I do? So Kevin, what do people do? Like, I'm sure there's a procrastinator listening to this right now. They know it's them. And
I used to be one of them.
Yeah. Ken from the past is listening to this right now. Don't ask me time travel questions. But what is someone supposed to do if it's now this new year? They're probably most likely dreading, doing their tax prep or whatever. Maybe there's some curiosity kind of questions they have about how their business went last year because now the year is officially over, and they could, be interested in some of those numbers and some of those totals or whatever, but they kind of don't want to look at it because it's overwhelming. So just speak to those people for a minute. Tell us, how can we get even a clean slate on the horizon here?
Yeah, you bring up a great point. And in fact, right now, the majority of new customers who write in are not talking about starting fresh for 2025. They're asking, hey, is there any way you can help me for 2024. And while we all like to think as business owners, we do a good job of staying on top of our business on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. We might at a high level, but when it comes down to the details, most people do really just wait until tax time forces you to, right?
Right.
But the good news is it's not going to be as bad as you fear, right? And we've talked about this in some prior episodes. Actually, if you're a procrastinator, you're set up very well to understand what it's going to take to clean the slate, because you're going to feel the pain as you go through it. And so one thing that's gotten a lot better in the last, several years, especially since, online banking became prevalent, it's on everybody's phones. The vast majority of your financial transactions do exist electronically somewhere, right? So it's just a question of pulling from different places.
Right.
Now, if you buy stuff with cash, it's going to get a little more challenging. If you commingle your business and personal finances, that makes it a lot worse. Just more time consuming, right? But by going through the process of tracking everything down for the prior year, and there's ways you can streamline that. And that's, our tool helps with a lot of that, because we can go pull in a year's worth of data from most of the marketplaces, many of the banks. We can upload your CSV data, things like that. There's still going to be things like, did you track your mileage? And if you didn't, how can you go kind of recreate that after the fact, right? Are you going back through your calendar, or are you looking at your purchases go through your credit card statement, and every time you went and you sourced somewhere or from your bank, go back and say, do I have a record of that trip? Oh, nope, I forgot to write that down. Let me go back and do that. That's where, Google Maps is your friend. And we're actually working on a blog post to explain a lot of these kind of tips for kind of recreating these mileage logs and things. So you can do that. And what I would recommend is, just as you're going through, if you're a procrastinator and you don't feel like you're on top of it, one, you're going to have to between now and April 15th.
One way or the other.
Yep. Or you can file an extension. And
then still have to do it later.
If you really want to procrastinate, you can push it out till October, baby.
How much do you love procrastinating? Just depends.
Yeah, although I shouldn't make too much fun, because we get people who come in and they're like, I haven't filed taxes in 3 years. Can you help me?
Yeah.
So if you wait till October, right, the answer is yes.
There is help for you.
Yes. So anyway, by going through that process, one of the, if you don't like it, which very few people do, and it helps motivate you, that's a good way to assess, are there things, kind of that upfront work you talked about, to kind of clean the slate and set yourself up for success going for next year? It's a great way to do it, right? You learn more by doing. So,
Can you speak to, like, it is like, thank God for online banking, right? Like, there is this digital record, like you're talking about, with most of the transactions, probably, if not all of them. Can you speak specifically to, like, okay, if someone is trying out Seller Ledger right now for the first time, free for 30 days, by the way, if you've never tried it, it's awesome. But how far back into the past can they pull transactions in? Like, because now it's a new year, and like you're saying, a lot of people are scrambling about last year. So how does that work, pulling in your transactions for 2024 if you've never even started?
Yeah, so we give everybody 90 days of data for free during the trial period. And then if you want to keep using it after that, we ask you to upgrade. To go back to the beginning of 2024, we ask people to commit to an annual plan. So we'll go get all of last year's data, and then you've also prepaid for the next year. So you're basically getting 2 years for one. The one caveat I would say is, a lot of banks, as great as online banking is, banks are still pretty bad at making really old data available. And a lot of them, they only make their statement data available in PDF format and things like that. But we did build a feature where just about every bank has the ability to go back and export a long period of time in a CSV, a comma-separated file format. Yeah. Pretty standard. You can pull it into Excel and other spreadsheets. If you can do that, we will help you format it and pull it in. So even if we can't automatically get it through our API access, application programming interfaces, which is how we connect to eBay and Amazon and Etsy and those guys, even if the banks don't give it to us that in such an automated way, they can give you a file. We have a support article that explains how to reformat that so it works in our software. If it's too hard, we'll help you. Our product team does all of our customer support. It's it's a one-time thing. We just try and help people get successful because we found, once you get over that hump of getting a bit organized, you get things synced.
Yep.
Yeah.
It gets way easier and the
Oh
software
my gosh,
does
like
most of the work.
infinitely easier.
Yep.
So much easier.
Yeah, and then you can go back to being a slacker.
Yeah.
I mean,
you know what? You'll have to find something else to procrastinate about, though, because there's hardly
right.
anything left to do at that point.
No,
It
that is
can't
so
hinge
true.
on you anymore.
That is so true. I mean,
There's a few things. We'll talk about them. There's just a couple things.
And just a quick story. I told Kevin this earlier, but I actually helped my friend get onto Cellular Ledger because he was trying to build and develop his own spreadsheet, and I pretty much just said like, hey, I could I could help you. What are the expenses that I do? And I just assumed that he knew that I use Cellular Ledger, and that's a pretty bad ad for me. But he was building it, and I pretty much just said like, hey, why do you need this? And he's like, well, I need to use this for write-offs and everything like that. And he's like, well, why don't you just show you mine? I mean, show you your copy. And I was like, well, I don't
like,
track the
copy of what?
Like, yeah. And he's like, how do you do it then? I was like, and then he starts saying like, well, do you have a bookkeeper? I assume, right? Because like just send receipts or something like that. Because that's kind of like that old-fashioned way, right? You send your receipts to your bookkeeper and stuff like that. I said, I kind of do, but it's automated. I was like, what do you mean automated? It's like, yeah, it's a ledger. And I showed him how it looks, and he signed up then and then, and he was like, I need that. I was like, yeah,
He's like,
exactly.
done.
I said, and I was like, see that Panda Express? It's like, I don't even have to touch that because I eat a Panda Express all the time. That's automatic. And see that, and then that's kind of like, for somebody, and he's not like full-time reseller right off the rip. So, like, to see that on the works was like, oh, this guy's cleaning the slate, because we were already talking about 2024, deductions and stuff like that. How do I pull it? So, if you're listening and you don't even have to be a full-time reseller. Actually, as a matter of fact, if you're a part-time reseller, you actually might need this more because it's way less time to maintain over later. That we're gonna dive deeper in how to maintain this, but to clean up the slate, I think it takes 10 minutes, and like Kevin said, there might be some different requirements for each bank, but I think most of the people that I talk to that uses major banks were pretty straightforward, and we just synced it. I believe it's through Plaid. Is that a thing that you guys use for most banks?
Yeah, they're the platform we use. They integrate with most of the banks. Back in the old days, there was a company called Yodlee that used much older technology, and that was very challenging. Nowadays, most modern applications connect with Plaid.
Because I've used Plaid
time.
before already, so it actually recognized my phone number and everything like that already, and it just kind of did a two-step verification. I was like, oh, like I didn't even have to like figure out that log in already because I've used it. So that was a very seamless transition.
I also want to just call out really quick, like, I don't think we actually mentioned specifically all the different platforms that Cellular Ledger connects to as far as the e-commerce side, like where you might sell. But that's another area where, it's a similar thing of kind of pulling in transactions, but instead of from your bank or your credit card, it's your transactions from your platform, your sales and your fees and like all that kind of stuff. And it knows what all of the little transactions are and labels them, which is great. But can you speak to that a little bit too? Just like if there's any slate cleaning to be done across different platforms, or just generally mention the ones that you guys can integrate?
Yeah, so that's probably where our greatest strength is the direct integrations of the platform. So we launched initially with eBay. We've added Amazon, Etsy, Shopify, Poshmark. Even though they don't have an API, we've got a way to automate some of that data, or most of that data.
It's just straight up magic.
Yeah, and then most
recently,
we added Walmart as well.
There we go.
So, yeah, we're if most people, once you get to turn, and we've had this conversation before too about becoming a real business, right? When you grow up and it's instead of part-time reselling and stuff, you're going to make a career out of this. Most people are selling multi-platform, and e-commerce businesses have a lot more detail than kind of, if you're just invoicing a client for services. This is a lot of information about your products and your profit and things like that, all of the fees. And we just pull it all in. We put it in the right tax lines. We show you your gross profit. And if you're tracking inventory and, if you're using that cost of goods sold field on eBay, or if you do it on Amazon and Shopify and Walmart, when the item sells, we'll calculate the cost of goods and the profit on that sale. So that's, one of the other benefits of kind of cleaning the slate and getting organized is once you do that, these other kind of insights about your business just show up. They come for free. So
yeah, they're just
pretty cool.
Automatically there. It's so magical. I'm saying it's magical, but it really is pretty astonishing. Although I do, Kevin, I have to say, I like to think of you as my personal bookkeeper. Like you're like pretending it's software and you're really just like typing frantically behind the scenes, putting it all in. No, I'm just kidding. But you're not. It's also that you're doing the heavy lifting, which is the great news. You have much better things to do than that.
Well, sometimes when I'm answering tech support questions, I do end up feeling quite a bit like a bookkeeper. So
yeah,
there's a good chance that when you write in, I will be answering you.
Yeah.
There you go.
I love that. It's, you're going to get the right answer. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, we do care. That's another thing that it seems to have been lost a little bit in this space, is just the desire to help people and actually answer their questions, as opposed to like just, close this ticket, move on to the next customer.
When things becomes automated, right? When things become automated, sometimes you just kind of like lose that touch. And no, you guys definitely provided that. We've had some things that was kind of like a nuance even in my transaction, and I didn't even know about it. You're the one that reached out to me. I was like, whoa, like, so that was.
Well, that's because you have some really interesting transactions there, Ken. I'm not going to share. Yeah.
We can't.
They are very creative.
That one hilarious. They have to pay extra to listen to that story.
Right,
yeah,
that's
going to be a
episode.
Premium episode.
Yeah, premium.
What did Ken buy that broke our software?
Yeah, and so I actually and here's
what did he sell? To whom? Where?
Talking about like cleaning the slate, I think.
Yeah, clean up your act there, Ken. Jeez.
No, I actually sent money, and I categorized it accidentally, with clicking, and this is how cool and easy it was to resolve. All of a sudden, my net profit was like almost in the negative. I'm like, whoa, like this is bad, right? I was like, what's wrong here? And then I actually look at the expenses, right? Because you have a Schedule C. I'm like, where did it? Because at the end of the day, it's just basic math, add, minus. And I was like, where did I lose money on?
Where did I go wrong?
Yeah, and then it showed up on meals.
Of course it did. Are you kidding me?
My meals showed like over like $150,000, and I'm like, whoa. I was like, I didn't take out that many people to eat, or I didn't buy that many. But it was actually a bank wire transfer that I did to buy inventory that I accidentally categorized as meals, because when I was clicking meals, it added into it. And it was actually really easy. I just had to find that and then recategorize it. And I was like, all of a sudden, I'm a profitable business.
Congratulations.
That also saved you from an absolute guaranteed audit.
Oh, yeah, right. We've already talked in a previous episode about how rare it is to get audited, but that'll do it right there.
That would do it.
That's a big old red flag.
It's like, so this guy sold this much and ate this much?
He lives to eat, I guess.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure their software would have caught that.
Right.
That is really funny.
That's a great story.
That is a great story.
On to the next one. So
all my customer service issues have been user error also, just so you know. But so that's great. I feel like we have a great idea here about cleaning the slate to like really wrap up last year, perhaps slay the dragon, whatever it takes, but, get our stuff in order, pull in all of our data so that we can clean up last year. But now it's a new year. And we've talked about some of this before, but just to reiterate, so like now we have the 2025 slate. And so just going all the way back for a moment to people who just don't really have a plan for their bookkeeping or their business finances, like a couple of things that might help prep this slate. One, you've already mentioned, Kevin, keeping your, not commingling your funds. So if you don't have a business bank account or a business credit card or whatever, your business accounts, now is the time, is never too late, right? So go ahead and get those set up. I would say that'd be like the first thing if you don't have those set up. If you do have those set up, there's still some things to do to kind of prepare for this year. So let's get into that side of it. Like 2025, we're still early in the year. You can still probably remember all of the mileage you've done this year so far. So that's another good one to start. But what are some things that we can do to prep this year's slate?
Yeah, so I think starting with the banks, you want to make sure that you are putting as much of your financial kind of history on something that ends up in electronic format, right? So the more you can move off of cash, and this is not to say, you definitely don't want to get into credit card trouble and things like that. But even if you just use a debit card, the more, as you're looking through last year, the more examples you can find where you don't have a good electronic record of it, try and eliminate those. Get things electronic, because that does allow for, if you're a procrastinator, you can likely find it at the end of the year. But really the power is, pretty much every bank out there right now, you can log into your account on the mobile phone or connecting it to modern bookkeeping software, ours, QuickBooks, everybody else. They're gonna have it every day. So all of those transactions, as your business operates, it just flows through to the back end. And then you guys have talked about one of the great things about the modern accounting software is it learns the more you use it, right? So there's this upfront work to kind of organize the types of transactions and the accounts you're using. But then the only thing we know how to treat everything coming in from the marketplaces. So all of your income and all of the fees are going to get categorized. It's really just the stuff that we don't know about, the spending that happens through banks and credit cards. But you kind of just have to tell us once and we remember. Yeah. And so,
that's my favorite part.
Yeah.
All my Dunkin' Donuts run, my Starbucks run. I only go to, and this is the cool part about, like, I guess with Seller Ledger that has helped me with the categorizing this stuff. Once you categorize stuff, it actually helps me now. I become like a creature of habit on where I actually get gas, on where I get food, and it actually, because it's like, because I'm such a I don't want to categorize more, so I'm like, only Shell Station, only Chick-fil-A.
Then Seller Ledger will know.
Yeah,
you'll definitely already know this was gas.
I don't wanna go to my Seller Ledger account and tell Kevin, like, hey Kevin, this trip, like, I went to Popeyes instead of Chick-fil-A, so this was out of town meal.
That's a good accountability strategy too. If you'd be ashamed to tell Kevin or have don't do it. Don't buy something there.
So now I know to look at his account on a regular basis, so I can shoot him an email and, what are you doing?
Yeah.
How could you go to BP like that?
Yeah, I know. It was like, it was the only gas station.
It sounds funny, but I actually had an email exchange within the last couple of days of a woman who is leaving one store platform and asked, before I sign up for the next one, who should I choose? Because I like how automated everything is with Seller Ledger. I don't want to pick something that's going to mess it up. Now, we're not good. We don't think so highly of ourselves that we say, oh, you should go choose all of your other, where to eat, where to, what platforms to use
based on what we like.
Accounting software.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting mindset, right? Especially if you have a really good understanding of the value of your time.
Yes.
Right. And where is your time best used? Is it best used outsourcing and selling and fulfilling? Or is it trying to go track all this stuff down at the end of
No.
the year or every quarter?
Yeah.
And, you know,
Well, and
No.
honestly, it's funny. We've been talking about our like 2025 goals, and I mean, we talk to our other reseller friends and community like all the time. I hear this over and over and over again from people, including myself, that a goal in my business and in others' businesses is more consistency. And what's funny about that, it feels a little bit like the tail wagging the dog to be like, well, I have to go eat at Chick-fil-A or whatever because, you know, that was where that will get categorized with definitely automatically as a business meal because it's already in there, whatever. Like, also, though, I think there is something to be said for reducing decision fatigue, right? That is a huge factor in creativity. And entrepreneurs are very creative, right?
Yeah.
Like we need our mental energy, we need our time free, like to keep growing and keep iterating. And I do think that, as silly as that sounds, to get the consistency and to cut down on the decision fatigue, like it's not a bad strategy in my opinion. I think it makes actually perfect sense.
No.
yeah. And when you're talking about the, you know, the nature of the time, right?
Yep.
We acknowledge that the domain that we're in is the least enjoyable part of running a business, right? Anything to do with taxes. It's terrible. Nobody likes it.
Yeah.
Even
Terrible.
accountants don't like it, right? They're stressed out during tax season. It's stressful for everybody. So just eliminating that, reducing that, and like we've talked about, putting in a little bit of thought at the beginning of the year. Okay, what can I do better this year? Let me look at what I've done. Okay, that's inefficient. That's not as fun. Let's get that off my plate.
Yeah.
So I can get back to what I enjoy, like why everybody's in the business, right? You're doing it for a reason
Totally.
other than to file taxes.
I have two suggestions for this step in the process of prepping the slate just from my own experience. And I want to hear your thoughts on these. The first one is to schedule a time to sit down and put your mileage in, like once a week. Like have a cup of coffee Friday afternoon and enter your mileage for that week so you never have to think about it again. It's so fast to do anyway, but trying to like, I think the step that is the most annoying is if you do like I did when I first started with Seller Ledger halfway through the year, and I was like, oh, I got to go back through my planner. Lucky for me, I write everything down because my brain doesn't hold on to information. So I could go back in my paper planner and see like every single trip that I took. And it wasn't hard to find that information, but it would have been easier if every week I spent 5 minutes on it instead of having to look through 6 months at a time.
Or you just take photo of your mileage.
And then have to look through all those photos.
No, I just take one photo at the start of the year and at the end of the year.
Ken,
Caveat.
Yeah.
Caveat. If you have a sourcing car.
Right, which I
So-
don't. My car is mixed use, so I'm, yeah.
So, well, you might need to buy a new car now because
So when you see me in my new car, now you know why.
It's all for
It's-
mileage deductions.
Decision fatigue sucks, guys.
right. I was
All
like,
this wasted time.
I'm gonna go into the dealership tomorrow and be like, guys, I need help. What do you need help, sir? I need to stop tracking my mileage and I need a car. So whether it be personal or sourcing,
Yeah.
just put it on one car.
I will need to get a new car pretty soon. So if,
There,
if
there
anyone's
you go.
offering,
There you go.
looking for a new
And
car.
also, Kevin, I just saw that you guys posted that this year, mileage deduction just went up to
70 cents a mile.
70 cents, baby.
Heck
Come
yeah.
on. And
Yeah,
I
that's turning into real money. So that is
Yeah.
an area to make sure you are writing stuff off.
that-
right?
that
Go
is-
back through every inventory purchase, any meal that you went to, any conference.
yeah.
Make sure you're deducting it.
Yep. So
That is wild.
I would just say that this year I will be renting less because I rent a lot this in 2024 because I didn't want to put quote unquote those miles on my car because of the maintenance and yada yada yada. I was like, but doing the math though, if you do the math, it's actually more advantageous for me as a business owner to actually have a dedicated sourcing car that in a way it takes the deduction up. And weigh in on this concept, Kevin. So let's say I get a car, I'm making car payments, and then at the end of the year I write off because I drive around. It depends on the season. Sometimes I've driven up to 80,000 miles in 1 year, and as least as 50,000 miles. But historically, every time I rent, I usually put like 3 to 5,000 miles on that rental. But I cannot write that off because it was a rental expense. It's not my own. So
I'm still impressed that these companies rent to you at all.
Oh, no, they
Putting
love
that
me.
kind of mileage
They
on.
they love me, and then and then the guy knows me now. The guy on the rental that's close to my house.
You're gonna have to break up with them.
He always gives me the brand new car. Like I've had a 3,000 mile car,
He's like, here
my
you go, run
goodness.
this one.
and then
into
I
the
give it
ground.
back with like 10,000.
Rude.
Maybe it's
So-
because they're claiming all of those miles or all the depreciation on their end. They're like,
Yeah,
Ken's
yeah.
depreciating our vehicles
Yeah,
for
so
us.
fast that in a year they get rid of it. You know what I'm saying? Because like
Oh, my
I'm sure
goodness.
there's a math.
But math wise, like you just said, your low year's 50,000 miles at
Yeah.
70 cents a mile. That's 35 grand.
yeah, exactly.
That's insane. Is
So-
there a limit?
No,
So, there's for the listeners out there, I would recommend talking to like an accountant or a
tax
CPA.
professional.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah,
Well, just
This is not
and
tax advice.
I've had this before. Back in the outright days.
Right.
We put vehicles into the company and stuff like that. There's a decision to be made around: do you take the standard deduction or do you
Yeah.
actually write off the real costs?
Right.
And so it's hard. Everybody's situation is different.
right.
So I don't want to come out and say, oh, everybody should just do this.
Yeah,
Though generally, if like Anna, if it's, part of the time is personal, part of the time is business, again, from that, decision
you'd have to
fatigue.
get standard,
just
right?
pick-
Standardized would be.
Yeah, standard is just easier. It's the same thing with the home office deduction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, where up to, I can't remember what the number is off the top of my head, but up to 500 square feet of your house, if you use it exclusively for business, you can write off, and I don't know if it's like $5 a square foot or something. But those kind of things, again, maybe you could earn an extra couple of dollars on the margin, but the simplicity of, I just
Yeah.
don't want to think about it. I want to go grow my business,
Yep.
right? That's the trade-off.
For sure. But I do think it's a good point. Like, if you're in a situation where you need to track your mileage, like you do own your vehicle, whether it's a business vehicle or not, as long as it's not a rental car, basically, you can
Yeah.
track your mileage and that can be an expense for you. So back to my suggestion, which is to schedule a time to
Yeah.
input your mileage every week.
Yeah, put
But-
it in your calendar.
But the prepping the slate part is only putting it in your calendar. The following through is the maintenance. So we're not going to talk about that yet. We're not there
Okay.
yet. Okay.
Yeah. And also
then-
a pro tip
go
on
ahead.
that: turn on your Google Maps, and
Yeah.
then you can just if you're not archaic like me versus Anna. Anna writes, I take screenshots. You could just use it that way because I've done it before. Before I've had a dedicated vehicle, I've just took screenshots of every long trips because like basically it would track, right? Because your mileage would track, and all, yeah. So that would be
Nice.
Turn on your Google Maps.
Well, there's nothing wrong with being archaic. Thank
No,
you very much.
no,
But also,
That's
but
why
also,
you're allowed to be a co-host here.
yeah, that's right. See, there's room for everybody. I'm living proof, you guys. Well, my other suggestion is to familiarize yourself with the Schedule C page in Seller Ledger
yep,
because I'm always singing the praises of the Schedule C page. I think it's my favorite part of the whole thing. I know that it is, but like for people who feel like, slightly nauseated looking at a tax form, what are the big main things people need to be looking at when they look at that page? Like what can they start to make a habit of checking in on with the Schedule C page?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, you're gonna have a pretty good idea of how much what your top line is.
Okay.
And so it's really about what are your expenses and how much money you're making. And I know this is one of Ken's favorite topics in terms of making sure you write off everything you are entitled to.
Yep.
Right. And in fact, I believe we were joking about now that Ken is the master of claiming all of these deductions and getting his Schedule C completely solid, that we should find a way to publish what all of his line items on the Schedule C. Not that we'll blur out the amounts, but in terms
No,
of
you can cut the amount in half. They can only see the bottom number.
There you go.
So it could be an 8 or a 0.
Right, and we don't know which.
You'll never know.
It'd be a 1 or a 7.
But why are there 4 of those zeros before the decimal
Yeah.
point? Why would that be entered, Ken?
oh,
That's
oh.
okay.
The smart ones are going to figure it out, Ken.
Yeah. But yeah, and the other thing, so in addition to the Schedule C, you can also drill down into your profit and loss report, which is basically all the categories that roll up to your tax form.
Yeah.
And a good tactic there is go look at your spending month over month, right? And it's very easy to kind of recognize patterns and say, oh, you know what? I don't have a whole lot of expenses for mileage. Oops, I think I forgot to do that. Or meals out or travel, and you can kind of compare that to your other records to help say, oh yeah, I may have missed something here.
Yeah.
And then I like your approach of when you find things like that, create a new system, a new reminder, a new process to force yourself to, I want to make sure I'm tracking that, right? And then as you do that, if it's a little more manual than you want, look at ways to automate it more. In the case of mileage, maybe you decide to download a mileage tracking application.
Right. A lot of people use them. Yeah.
Yep. Mile IQ, I think, is the one that we hear the most people want to integrate with. So there's, odds are there's lots of good automated solutions out there. The other thing is go on pretty much any discussion board and, Google or search. Yeah. But there will be people who say, well, this is what I did. And you can find some interesting tips and recommendations that way too.
Yeah, that's really good. I think too, some people just maybe aren't as familiar with what are the accepted expense categories, right? Probably somebody listening to this is like, you can write off meals. What? Yep. I think you don't know what you don't know. So that's a good way also to see and start being in the habit of thinking of your expenses as tax expenses, right? As business expenses that can be stacked against your income when it comes to tax time. So if you're not familiar with what all those different categories are, that's a good way to get familiar too. And that's where it's so helpful that this is a specifically e-commerce thing, right? It's gives you some clues there.
Yeah, and we did when designing our tax report. Every line there's a little dotted line under the name of the tax line that you can click on. It pops up the IRS instructions that it'll even give you examples of types of things to put here that says, okay, for office expense, you may include this, this, and this. So just trying to be as transparent as possible. Yeah,
it's super helpful. And also just shameless plug about all of the blogs you guys have written. There's so many blog posts on Seller Ledger that are about a lot of the ins and outs of things. And so even if you're looking, if you have a question and you haven't directly contacted customer support yet, there's so many answers in the blogs, and they actually give you the answer, which I find very helpful because there's all these listicles and things on the internet where you're okay, I just spent all this time reading and I didn't find the answer, but you guys always actually give the answer. You're not holding out for giving the answer.
Well, it's basically our primary philosophy. We don't write a ton of content, but when we do, we try and go deep and answer the actual question people are asking.
Yes.
And almost all of the topics come from questions that people write in about, because we do get people asking tax advice all the time. Yeah. And we tell them we can't give you specific tax advice because we don't know your entire situation. And, we're not CPAs. We build software to be able to do this. But a lot of times, the two big, other than coming directly to our homepage, the two biggest topics that drive traffic to our blog was the one about consignment selling and how do you handle that from a tax perspective. And the other is sales tax and inbound shipping, and is it a part of cost of goods sold, right? And so those are things where there are answers out there. The IRS has them. They're not necessarily easy to find or understand, so we just try and break it down. And especially for an e-commerce seller, like you said before, there's a lot of just these little quirks, right? If I'm selling personal stuff in addition to my business stuff, and that's in my 1099, what do I do, right? It's hard to get or to find content out there about such a specific situation. So those are the kind of things we try and tackle.
Yeah, it's very helpful. I super appreciate it, and I have benefited personally from some of that type of stuff. So keep on putting it out there.
We'll do our best.
There's always more, right? There's like always more little nuances or specific, I don't know, situations or changing, changes in the tax law for the year, changes in the code. So it's a whole lot. But all right, are you guys ready to talk about the easiest part?
The easiest
Sure.
part. This is what I
Maintaining the slate, baby. So obviously mileage, you got to update your mileage every once in a while. What else do we have to do? What else do we have to do beyond that?
Honestly, it depends on how good a job you did cleaning the slate and setting yourself up. So I'll give you
future
the
self will thank your past self on this one.
yeah. I'll just describe what I think is probably where Ken is by now. But like the ultimate scenario for minimizing this kind of work. And we have had, I'm not kidding, people write in and say, by the way, I just, did all my books in 10 minutes, sent it over to my accountant. They filed the tax return. I'm done. 10 minutes. That's what it took me.
Magic.
So what does it take to do that? We've talked about it before, having, good bank and credit cards set up, making sure you're yes, financial hygiene, account hygiene. Make sure everything goes through them, and then connect to, whether it's our software or somebody else, that with all of your selling platforms, as long as you are diligent about keeping your transactions through those platforms, this software can do 95 to 99% of the lifting for you. All of your e-commerce transactions that come in get put in the right places because we can see all of the detail behind it. For an order, we know what the item price was. We know if shipping was collected. We know if fees were taken out, right? All of that is just done. So your top line and some of your expenses, done. So then it really comes down to the bank and credit card transactions. And that's just a function of, tell us what these were for. And we actually have one of our coolest features for that. One of the first things we built is, you'll connect your bank or your credit card and it'll pop up and it'll say, you have 100 uncategorized transactions. And it's like, oh my God, that sounds like a lot of work, right? But then you click on it and we actually group them by vendor. And so if
which is
you,
so easy. I love that.
The odds are, of those 100 transactions, 30 of them might be from one vendor. You categorize once, 30% of your transactions are categorized. They'll be remembered forever. Oh, that list just got a lot shorter, right? And you just do a handful.
You just took a third of it out, yeah.
Right, and it shrinks so rapidly. In fact, we actually have a demo. We have a how-to video, and we did a whole special for eBay sellers on a tutorial to get started. And one of them demonstrates exactly that, right? Like, okay, it looks like, there's a lot of information. There's a lot of work to be done. No, we group the work. We chunk it out for you. So just to answer this one piece of information, we'll apply the logic to everything else. And so then it really is, you do that probably for the first couple, the first time might be, 15, 20 minutes. And then next month log back in and it's a handful of transactions. But by the end of the year, most days you look in, there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
It's just, most weeks, really nothing to do because if
I
you're
actually
getting in
don't
that
categorize all of them. That way when I come back, there's stuff to do. I've never zeroed it out. I don't know why. I get weirded out when I
That's
go
weird, Ken.
Yeah. I
Why
want
do you
something
do
to
that?
click. I want something to click when I go in.
Do you purposefully unread emails?
No.
No.
I purposely delete
Goodbye.
unread emails. I'm just joking. No.
That gives me hives.
All right.
No. For this
So we're
one,
above the inbox at least. Okay.
Yeah,
That makes me feel better.
That's hilarious.
I actually a favorite of a lot of emails.
There you go.
But no, I think
You
you
can always
said
go
it right.
categorize his emails later.
Yeah.
Right.
Need something to do.
This is this is really like my favorite part of doing it because it actually the maintenance work is more of like a temperature check on how your business is doing, and one of the things that we're doing for 2025 in our businesses, I'm trying to watch how I spend, aka the unnecessary spending that doesn't need to happen when Ken just wants a newer camera, when Ken just wants an upgrade here, an upgrade there. There is a method to the whole never settle methodology, but sometimes I just go overboard, never settling. And I'm just
Never-
like,
Never
right?
settle down.
Yeah, yeah.
Always
So,
just going,
so yeah, it's helping me. The maintenance mode is kind of like that temperature check. It's like, okay, this is the money that's coming in, and this is the money that's coming out. So now I'm more hyper focused on the money that I spend to get more inventory. So that's how I see it. Like, okay, eBay sees me. I see eBay like, okay, this is your last 7 days, or this is your daily sales. Now I see that when I see my expense, or when I need to categorize purchases in Seller Ledger, I was like, okay, this makes sense. Last week we made this on eBay, and this week this is the money that went out. I'm trying to keep more money in and less money out. So that's the goal. And it equals profit, right?
That's right.
Yeah, that's a great approach. And that you're kind of speaking to like one of the other benefits of kind of getting organized and getting it maintained. So you have to put very little effort in for the bookkeeping, which is all of that time. Not only could you be spending outsourcing and listing and stuff, but you can be looking at your business and analyzing it and finding ways to improve your results. So instead of spending your time in money for organization and tax purposes, which is just kind of this necessary evil,
Right.
Yes.
now you're looking at it to become smarter about your business. One of the things we didn't really talk about it, and it gets into a lot more detail in terms of cleaning the slate, is, for those people out there who get into, detailed inventory tracking, doing things like make sure you have unique SKUs for all of your products, come up with a good plan for the unique identifiers for your products, how you're going to list them so that it all ties back. Get lots of interactions with customers who either don't assign SKUs or use the same SKU over and over, and then their results come in and they look at their data and they're like, oh my God,
And
what's
it's a
going on?
mess.
How do I sort this out? It's like, well, we can. It's going to take some effort, and you're going to have to go back and rematch and check all this stuff. Might I suggest in the future for, going forward, set yourself up much better. Use unique smart codes, and there's lots of techniques you can use on that.
Yeah, we'll have to talk sometime in the future about that, about the inventory management side of Seller Ledger, because I haven't used it really yet, but I kind of have an idea about something I want to do with it in this year at some point. So we'll talk more about that. But I was kind of thinking along the same lines. Like I used to, many years ago, shout out to the Scavenger Life podcast. That's how I learned to sell on eBay. And I love that podcast so much. It taught me like everything I knew. And I mean, I've continued to learn since it hasn't been a podcast anymore, but they like raised me. So I like appreciate it so much. But they would always talk about how, they'd ask kind of, how do you feel like the week was, right? Did it feel like a slow week? Did it feel like sales were good? And like we have these internal like impressions of how our business is doing. And so often they're just like not accurate, right? It's a feeling. I have to imagine that only compounds when you add in other platforms too. Like I can hardly get an accurate feeling about my business when I am on just one platform. But if I were spread across other platforms too, it'd be even harder to kind of just discern that with a gut check. So I really like this idea too that, you might start out kind of feeling like you're giving a lot to the bookkeeping process. Like you're the one who's kind of trying to push in all the information and get everything right and sort it out. But then it starts giving you back so much more, right? It becomes like, well, now you show up in Seller Ledger in your dashboard to take away from it, right? To take away insights and to kind of see a lot more clearly based on all this data, like how your business is doing. And like you said, where you can maybe make things more efficient or where you can buy more or, cut back on expenses or whatever. And it's just so much more helpful than some gut feeling. I mean, in general, I would always tell people like, trust your gut, but like your gut's not really good at knowing exact numbers about your business, like that's not what it's for. So please look at your numbers and learn to love them, right? Because they're going to tell you the truth about what's going on with your business, and having it all in front of you is pretty priceless.
Yeah, it's a great point because it's so easy, and we have it here with our business, right? It's ups and downs, different days, and emotions get high, they get low, and all this. but the numbers don't lie. The numbers
Yeah.
are what is happening. And, you know, you could be overly optimistic and maybe you need that reality check, or maybe you are spending too much on upgrades, and,
Yeah.
you know, the software can be there to say, hey, might be time to rein it in. But you could also, you know, if you have a slow week or you're feeling bad, you know, you can go in and look and say, actually, no, this month is looking pretty good. And it puts it in perspective. And yeah, no, I'm doing all right. So I think that's a great point, right? Just the numbers are what they are. They will give you the truth, as long as you are prepared to face them.
Yes. And if you set them up accurately to run, you know, to run on their own after that, like, which is the beauty of what the software does. But yeah, it's like, it is a little work up front sometimes to get it all in order, but then once it's in order, it keeps giving back to you indefinitely, which is so great.
Yeah, it's not like going to the gym where you actually have to show up and do the same workout or even harder workouts each time. It's kind of the opposite. The more you come in, the less you have to work out.
Can you find me a gym that does that too?
Right? Wouldn't that be great?
It would be so great.
The contrast of trying to grow your money and trying to grow your muscles. It's actually opposite. We found something that doesn't work.
Where it doesn't perfectly align with the gym analogy. It's actually, that's where they diverge. I love it.
Alrighty. So, Kevin, any final thoughts about cleaning Slate?
No, other than just don't be afraid of it, right? It's not that hard. Put the time in. It does pay out, whether it frees up time or it tells you more about your money. But yeah, don't be afraid of it. And anybody who's interested in trying us out, again, we don't ask for a credit card until you're happy with the software, and we actually encourage people to email us in for support. We'll do our best to help.
Well, there you have it.
Doesn't get better than that.
Exactly. And also, too, I mean, I think one of the things that, you know, we kind of unraveled throughout this conversation is it's beyond just a bookkeeping software to do your taxes. It's a lot of it has to do with actually being able to understand your business better, understand your expenses. And, you know, like I know we all, us resellers, would love to, like, oh, I bought it for 10, I flip it for 60, right? Like, we all automatically see, like, oh, $50 profit, right?
Like,
and
so
I just need to do it. Yeah, I just need to do it 10,000 times, and you know, I'm you know, $500,000 right there or whatever. But I think this is kind of like, I totally agree with what Kevin said. Don't be afraid to look at it, because if there was anything that you could control, it's actually this one, especially in the expense portion, and totally acting like a full-time or a real business, because the IRS will
treat you like a real business.
Will treat you like a business. So I'm like, okay, how about this? You know, how about all my mileage deduction? Oh, you want to see it? Yeah, there's my car out there. Come take a look at the mileage clock or the odometer. There you go. So give me my money back. I'm just joking.
So give me my money back. Well, honestly, though,
so take that write-off out of here.
It's very empowering. Where it might be scary, you're afraid to look behind the curtain at your own numbers. It's very empowering once you know them. Like, you're pretty much unstoppable.
And also,
then.
like we said, there's digital copies of everything. I mean, I think one of the biggest fear that I had before was, like, what if I lost the receipt?
Yeah.
Right. What if I didn't have all this? Well, you know, all my flights, all my travel, a lot of the expenses, if I didn't pay it with cash, it's already there. And actually, the cash transactions that I have are actually withdrawals from my bank. So there it is. That was a big withdrawal. That was buying cost of goods, or ATM withdrawals and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of advantages that we have doing business nowadays with the digital world, and you know, partner with a software like this. I mean, come on. I'm just gonna be more, you know, it, to be honest, it actually helped me with kind of like the should I rent more cars or should I just purchase it? And
it like gave you the answer to the question.
It did.
Right?
It did. Like, literally, like, one it was just a one sit down, just chopping it up, and at that point, it doesn't matter what car I get. It doesn't matter, because all of them will log miles. The beauty of all this, all of them will log miles, and like Kevin said, numbers won't lie. So I think it's a very productive conversation today, guys. And If you guys have any question, make sure you DM us or you follow Seller Ledger on Instagram and shoot them an email there. Make sure you try them out. Let's make 2025 our best year yet. So huge shout out to Seller Ledger for being here, a sponsor for this podcast. Kevin, thank you. Anna,
Thank you for having me.
thank you
Always
for
a
this
pleasure.
great conversation. And we will see you in the next episode. Peace.
Bye.